Good morning, everyone. Hope we're doing well. This is meant to be a very short introduction to philosophy and the subcategories. As this is a philosophy class, I thought I should give you a brief background. And as you'll see, really we spend the most amount of time on the ethics portion of it, obviously. But in some philosophy, easily is understood because this is a word that everyone uses every which way. Oh, my philosophy on life, or oh, my philosophy on life, right? Or the philosophy of science, or the philosophy of religion, or the philosophy of business ethics, medical ethics, whatever. But in some, if you really want to understand the base of philosophy, it breaks down into two words. Philos, which is a form of love, and more like brotherly, like affection, right? Rather than like eros, which is more of an erotic love. And Sophia, which is a beautiful name we use a lot these days, which just means wisdom. So in some, philosophy is a love of wisdom, right? And as I think Aristotle once said, he said, philosophy begins in wonder or awe, right? That's the beginning, right? When humans experience the world around them and we're like, wow, right? Almost a state of reverence and just what's the word I'm looking for? It's not stupor. Stupendous. That was closer to it, right? We're just, we don't have the words for it, but we know it's meaningful. And so we ask questions, right? And if we really ask questions, we come to find that most people disagree with each other and don't even have the same understanding of the world going around them, or what's going on, or what's real, what's true or false. And so human thinking is prone to error, and we need some standard. And a lot of this class is going to be spent letting you guys test your ethical thinking, right? Not necessarily our scientific thinking, right? But a lot of the logical trains of thought are the same. But really see if you can find a good standard against which to measure your own instincts. Because I'm not going to claim to actually teach you ethics, right and wrong, good and bad, right? You probably learn that at the knees of your grandpa or grandma or whoever raised you, yeah? But moving forward, so there's three main areas of philosophy. Metaphysics, which is a fancy word for what is reality, what's stuff made up of. Early philosophers thought that everything deep down underneath was made of fire, right? Or everything deep down was made of water, right? There's like one element that everything was made of. And actually, it was philosophers like Epicurus or Lycurgus. Not Lycurgus. Lycurgus. Lucretius. Yeah, Lycurgus set up Sparta. Sorry. Lucretius was an early Epicurean, right? Which is like a form of hedonism. Very, very astute things. Got many things right, many things wrong. But Lucretius deduced, just from his observation, 5 senses, that deep down everything in the world had to be made up of atoms, small indivisible units, right? And this is kind of the thinking of the nature of the world that we lived in for a long time, is that everything's made of atoms, right? Even up until the 20th century, when we started to actually break atoms down and realize that these indivisible objects, right, which I think is what atom means, indivisible, right, the base unit of reality, actually we can break those up even further, right? And there's a whole quantum realm, and these hard objects, which we thought are like everything's made of, like this laptop is real, it's really here, it's solid, I can't pass my hand through it. Well, we know that at a deep enough level, those atoms are largely space. Like most of an atom, those electrons and protons spinning around are mostly space, right? And that really, they're only next to each other at a vibrational level, yeah? I mean, crazy stuff, but what is reality? Epistemology, which is a fancy way of saying, what is knowledge, right? How can we know things? And axiology, which is concerned with the distinction between value and facts, something I'll go into more. And really this breaks into 2 areas. Aesthetics, right? What is beautiful, what is ugly, right? What the distinction between subjective and objective, another thing I will hammer hard in this class. And lastly, ethics. The judgment of human action as right or wrong, good or bad, yeah? But, just to flip through this quick, I'm going to keep this short. Epistemology, right? A lot of I'm going to make the case in this class that many of you I'm going to, assume based on past experience that many of you are ethical relativists or moral relativists. And what do I mean by this? I mean that most people, when you really push them, think that right and wrong comes down to whatever a person or a group of people feel it does, right? So is freedom of speech really valuable? Is that a fundamental right, that if we deprive people of that we're depriving them of something fundamental? Well, we feel it is, but other cultures don't, etc., etc. And so a lot of what I want to do in here is really test our beliefs, not only about what's true and false, but also what's right and wrong, and see if we can find the thing in the middle, knowledge, which partakes of that which is true. There's the world outside, and then there's our own thoughts about the world. And if you've lived long in this world, you know that many people's thoughts and beliefs about the world don't actually map on to the world, right? They're still believing Santa exists when, the facts are in. Sorry to pop anyone's bubble. And so we're going to be testing all of our beliefs, ideas about right and wrong, true and false, against experience, case studies, historical events, thought experiments we make up, to see how well it actually reverberates and explains knowledge. Yeah, just to run through this, metaphysics is the branch of philosophy that's concerned with reality. What is real? What is it made up of? Is what we see, hear, and touch the real world, or is it only a shadow of something else that is more real and significant? Is there reality beyond the physical world? Is there a God? Are there other spiritual beings? Do humans have a soul that is eternal? Is anything eternal? And this is interesting. You might think, why does this have to do with reality? Well, one of the patterns we see in reality is cause and effect, right? Everything that happens was caused by something. You hear a sound, I promise you something caused that sound. 10 out of 10, right? Bet your bottom dollar. You feel something, I promise you something caused that feeling, right? Something stimulated it. And when you look at the world, the universe is clearly in motion, right? All these things are bumping into each other, like everything's caused by things upstream. Why is there life here that's procreating? Well, because life in the past procreated. Well, if you trace all those causes back, you have to ask, what got the whole thing rolling, right? Was there a first cause? Was it just going on infinitely, right? Well, when we know that there's a Big Bang, it lends itself towards, was there an uncaused causer, right? Someone who sits outside. Or are we just third manning it, right? Just tracing it back. It's just turtles all the way down, right? Don't worry too much if this is just very abstract stuff. We're not going to spend too much time on metaphysics. We will a little in the cave allegory, but it's going to be mostly ethics. But I just wanted to give people a real brief layout of the three branches. Again, it's metaphysics, epistemology, and really ethics or aesthetics, which is how should we live, right? What's the way to live? So there's what is reality, how do we know things, and how should we live, yeah? And you may have seen a famous painting, one of my favorites, by Raphael, called School of Athens. And just to point out who we're going to be checking out first, over here, this guy is Socrates, who kind of got the whole ball rolling, kind of considered the father of philosophy, even though he wasn't necessarily the first. But we literally break it up into pre-Socratics, Socrates, and everyone else, right? So he's kind of he's a pivotal figure. But why is he not in the middle? Well, who do we have in the middle here? Dang, two imposing people. We've got Plato on the left, the elder. So Socrates was the teacher of Plato, and Plato was the teacher of, yes, Aristotle. And Plato and Aristotle fundamentally disagreed on the nature of reality, right? Plato on the left had this idea called the forms, where he thought that which is most real exists not here, right? There's no real triangles or circles, right, or straight lines anywhere in the world, right? They're deviations at a very small level of analysis. But in pure thought, right, abstract form, they're perfect, right? And even though justice in one country and justice in another country, they all differ and disagree and have their faults, they all partake of something which is really truly justice, right? The same for good and bad. And so he thought that which was most real, like the world was corruptible and, prone to breaking down and prone to error. But there was something running through it, principles, codes, ideas, forms that were true and unchanging and pure. He even thought that the human soul was such a thing, right? That had many incarnations. This was one of the ideas he lobbied. But his student, Aristotle, is pointing at the ground. Plato's pointing up. He's like, that's what's real. And Aristotle's like, no, brother, it's right here. Because Aristotle thought you had to take that which was present. Existence exists. We have this stuff around us, and that's real. And if we want to work towards abstract forms, concepts of justice, right and wrong, equality, freedom, right, the individual, these are vast abstractions. Like, this is the first, right? Real casuistry, working, towards first principles. But I could go on to this. My boy Diogenes, the early cynic, man, that was a guy. He lived in a wine barrel in the streets and thought that the more we got back towards that which was natural, the happier we would be, and that the more artifice we brought into our lives, how plastique we became, equally proportionate to our misery. But I think this is a fine introduction. I'm going to go much more into ethics, and I'm actually going to have you guys post on why you think something is right or wrong, good or bad, and why there's so much disagreement over it. But I hope this helps, and see you in the next video.